Shining Vale is the new horror comedy on the all-too-forgotten cable network Starz. The show stars Courteney Cox, Greg Kinnear, Mira Sorvino, Gus Birney, and Gage. The show was also created by Sharon Horgan. Shining Vale tells the story of a family who decides to move away from the big city to a small town and move into a mysterious house that has a bloody past. So initially when I heard about this show, I didn't really know anything about it. I was just looking for stuff to watch, and Shining Vale caught my eye because I feel like we don't have a lot of horror comedies in today's TV space. And it was on Starz, and a lot of people don't really talk about Starz, and I was like, okay, they got a budget, so maybe this is going to be good. And I like the creator of the show, Sharon Horgan. I like her stuff and all the stuff that she's directed before and all that, so I was like, okay, this is going to be good. We got Courteney Cox at her prime right after Scream 5, so I was really looking forward to what's going on here. So let's get into this recap with episode 1, titled Chapter 1, Welcome to Casa de Phillips. So the show starts off with the family driving to their new home. We have Pat and Terry, who are the mother and father here, and they are going through a marital strife. Courteney Cox's character, Pat, was caught having an affair with the family plumber, and it pretty much torn her relationship apart with her husband, Terry. But Terry really seems like the kind of guy that hides his emotion, and we'll get more into that as the episode goes on, as well as episode 2. But he's kind of like, I want a fresh new start, so that's why he uprooted his entire life, and not only his entire life, but the family's entire life, going into Shining Vale. He really feels that this is the way for him to bring his family together. We also get an introduction to Terry and Pat's kids, Gaynor and Jake. Gaynor being the older sibling, the teenage girl. She has pretty much not really accepted, or I don't know how you would accept the fact that her mother has had an affair with the plumber, and she pretty much lets her mom know throughout this episode that she doesn't approve of what she's doing. And it's pretty much like the typical teenage girl trope, as like, really angsty and like rebellious and everything, but it's kind of acceptable when you add in the fact that she's reacting to the way that her mother handled the situation. But as the family gets into the house, quickly Patricia starts hearing things in the distance and seeing quote-unquote ghosts. And as I say quote-unquote ghosts, we don't really know what's going on here. She relays that concern to her husband Terry, but Terry pretty much just says that it's a deer. Every time that she says that there's a ghost here, he says maybe it's a deer. As the family starts to get settled into the house, Terry goes off to start his job in the city, and the kids go to school. Patricia tries to attempt to write her new book, because if she doesn't, then the retainer that she got ahead of time will have to be paid back. And this is when we get more details of Patricia's backstory and her career. She is a famous writer, but she hasn't written a book in 6 years, and she's pretty famous for Twilight stuff, pretty much, but more graphic, if you will. And as Pat tries to figure out how to write this story, it seems like she gets possessed by the same ghost as she's seen previous in this episode. And unlike Gaynor, Jake, the younger brother, kind of is a very antisocial type of person and is on video games all the time. I hear you, I love video games too. But the family really wants him to interact with human beings and be social and look at people in their eyes when you're talking to them. And his response to that is to go on VR and have a VR chat with a man named Jake, who they presume is a man named Jake. And the family doesn't really take that pretty well, and they say, he could be a predator and you could be getting preyed on right now. We are also briefly introduced to a creepy lady that is not really looking at the Phillips and she's just looking at the house that they're in and is chanting, doing some kind of thing that Pat doesn't really like and is trying to figure out what's going on here. And at the end of episode 1, we get Patricia confronting the ghost face to face, and the ghost asking her, "What are you doing in my house?" And the episode ends there. So initial thoughts of this first episode, I thought it was pretty good. I was very enthralled and interested into the story. I love the family dynamic of the Phillips family. It does feel familiar as past families in movies and TV shows, but it has a little bit of a uniqueness with each of their character tropes. And the show really gives me some Beetlejuice vibes. I don't know if it's the house, maybe because it looks very 60s to 70s or 50s era kind of style, but just some of the lighting and some of the execution and some of the scenes, it just gives me that Beetlejuice vibe. We get strong performances by everybody across the board. Courteney Cox, of course, is the standout. I mean, she's the main focus, the lead of this show, and she does an excellent job. So let's jump into a recap of episode 2 of the series. Chapter 2, She Comes at Night. So the episode starts off with Pat dreaming about the ghost that she saw at the end of episode 1, and they're having a conversation, and then the ghost takes her cigarette and burns Pat's arm. She wakes up and tries to tell Terry that she's had a dream about this ghost again. And of course, Terry's response is, are you sure? Are you okay? What's going on? And they talk about the past between her mom as being psychotic and everything. And maybe that they should continue doing this therapy that they have been doing since the incident that happened with Patricia and the plumber. The therapist talks to Terry and asks him, why are you bottling up all this anger? Because it doesn't really seem like you're really venting it out. And this is where we're getting some plants and some seeds into Terry's character of him holding in a lot of his anger and his sadness. And Patricia and the therapist bring up concerns that they don't want him to blow up. They want him to vent it out. And Terry says, don't worry about it. I'm going to be able to control this. But I think we know where this is going. And right after this session, Terry goes to the plumber's house to confront him. They have a conversation and he asks the plumber if this was intentional for him to have an affair, to sleep with his wife, and is he in love with his wife? The plumber pretty much says no, it was just a fling, it was just happened, clothes came off and things just started happening. Terry kind of seems relieved by this fact, but still angry. You can see it on his face. Then he takes his, espresso machine. Meanwhile, Pat reaches out to her editor to show her the first chapter of her new book, but she's very concerned because she doesn't remember that much writing this entire chapter. Of course, the editor doesn't care because she just wants the bottom line, but she encourages Patricia to keep on doing what she's doing. Whatever drugs you're taking, she's okay with. She just wants you to finish the book. Pat then runs into the ladies of the auxiliary club, one of them being the realtor that sold them the house that they're currently living at. When the ladies of the auxiliary club realize that Pat is in the creepy house in town, they all give her a look like they know what has happened in that house, but they don't want to say anything. Patricia, being the smart person that she is, she quickly sees this and she says, well, is there anything wrong with the house? But the ladies quickly gather themselves and say, oh no, there's nothing wrong. We then get like a quick turn with Gainer's character as she's pretty much changed her whole look. She went from she wanted to dress any way that she wants, and her mom saying in the first episode, you don't want to dress really revealing for your first day at school, to now very being done up and very conservative look. And we learn later in this episode that the reason why she's doing this is because she's met a boy who happens to be the son of the creepy lady that Patricia saw in the first episode, who was chanting under her breath. Patricia then hears something during the night and she goes to investigate with their dog, who is probably going to be no help at all because it's a very, very small dog that can barely see, because you need to cut those bangs, guys. She goes into the woods and what does she see? She sees a deer. So I guess Terry was right. After writing a couple of chapters, Pat comes down to be with her family as they're all having dinner and having a conversation. And then Jake tells them that his friend Fred that he met on the VR chat room is here and that they're going to meet finally. Of course, Pat and Terry look concerned because they think this is a scam, a predator that's going to their house. And a very funny scene comes up where they meet face to face with this Fred character, but it actually turns out to be Fred is actually a kid and his dad is there with him as well. Fred's dad invites himself into the house while the Phillips are having dinner and they have a very awkward conversation. But after that, Patricia and Terry excuse themselves and go into the kitchen to have a conversation where Patricia sees her best-selling book that she wrote 6 years ago mysteriously keeps on showing up. Patricia tries to explain this to Terry, that something's going on, there's some weird stuff going on, but of course Terry doesn't get it. During this argument, Patricia pretty much expresses to him that the reason why things probably started going bad is because every time she brings up something to him or expresses her concerns, he kind of dismisses it and doesn't take it seriously. Terry then realizes that he needs to try better and needs to listen to his wife, and they have a, nice embrace and looks like things are moving forward. But then we have Fred's dad in the background just watching and smiling the whole time, pretty much like us, the audience. But then the episode ends with Patricia going into the closet, following this long ribbon, this long yellow ribbon into the closet, and sees that there is a small hole in the closet, and she peers inside. But of course, there's a jump scare and the ghost is right behind her, and the ghost tells her that, "Don't worry, Patricia, you're not crazy." And then the episode ends. So that is the first 2 episodes of Shining Vale. And like I said, I really enjoyed this show. I love the elements that they're having in here. I love the comedy. I love the horror. It's not that scary. If you're really concerned about that, is this too scary? It's not that scary. At least now it's not. The first 2 episodes, I'll say mild. But my favorite thing about this show is that we really don't know what's going on. And I know that might turn some people off because, you want to know the plot. You want to know what's going on. But for me, I think that's a nice, refreshing take that we get here in this show because we don't really know what's going on. And I feel like shows used to be like that. We didn't know what was going on. Maybe it was because, back in my day, I'm not that old, but there was a time when I watched shows and, the synopsis and everything wasn't on the internet for everybody to see, and you just watch the show and things would happen and you were just surprised. That's what I feel about this show, with them not revealing the plot and just slowly opening it up each episode. So guys, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Did you like Shining Vale? Did you like this recap that I did here? Let me know in the comments down below. Also guys, don't forget to check out my Twitter so you can stay up to date with my channel, and don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time guys, keep watching.